But it seems like every single day on television I'm talking about race, and sometimes I get so tired of talking about it. Can we move on?
And if you talk about
The camera lens focused on a face the world has trusted for decades. Morgan Freeman sat in the soft afternoon light, his hands folded carefully in his lap, and spoke words that shattered the carefully constructed image of the man we thought we knew. This wasn't God from Bruce Almighty. This wasn't the wise narrator guiding us through documentaries with that unmistakable voice. This was a man at 87 years old, vulnerable and raw, finally revealing the truth about his greatest regret, his darkest moment, and the price he paid for becoming one of Hollywood's most beloved icons. What he admitted will change everything you thought you understood about success, sacrifice, and the cost of that golden voice. For generations, Morgan Freeman has been our moral compass, the voice of reason in a chaotic world, the grandfather figure who makes sense of complexity with simple wisdom. We've watched him play presidents and prisoners, mentors and murderers, always bringing dignity and gravitas to every role. His voice alone has narrated our understanding of the universe, of nature, of history itself. He is, quite simply, one of the most respected actors alive. But respect and happiness are not the same thing. Fame and fulfillment are not interchangeable. And behind that serene exterior lived a man drowning in secrets that threatened to destroy everything he'd built. The revelation came during a private conversation that was never meant to go public. Morgan spoke about the loneliness of being everyone's wise elder when you feel lost yourself, about the marriages that crumbled under the weight of expectation, about the scandal that nearly ended his career and the accident that almost ended his life, about living 8 decades and still not knowing if any of it mattered. At 87 years old, Morgan Freeman is finally ready to tell us the complete truth, and it will leave you absolutely speechless. Morgan Freeman was born on June 1, 1937, in Memphis, Tennessee, into a world that didn't want him to succeed. His father, Morgan Porterfield Freeman, was a barber who drank too much and worked too little. His mother, Mame Edna, cleaned houses for white families, scrubbing floors and raising 4 children on wages designed to keep black families in permanent poverty. Morgan was the youngest, arriving during the depths of the Great Depression when survival itself was an achievement. The family moved constantly, chasing work, chasing hope, never finding enough of either. When Morgan was just 6 years old, his parents couldn't afford to keep the family together. They sent him to live with his maternal grandmother in Charleston, Mississippi. The separation was devastating. A child doesn't understand economic necessity. A child only understands abandonment. Morgan's grandmother was strict and religious, raising him in a world of church services and cotton fields, of hymns and hard labor. She taught him discipline. She taught him respect. But she couldn't fill the hole left by absent parents. That school became Morgan's refuge. He was bright, curious, intensely observant. But Mississippi in the 1940s offered limited futures for black children. The schools were segregated and underfunded. The teachers were overworked and under-resourced. Dreams were luxuries that poor black kids couldn't afford. Morgan was told repeatedly that his ceiling was low, that he should be grateful for whatever scraps the world offered. That ambition was dangerous for someone like him. At age 8, Morgan accidentally killed his grandmother's sister by stabbing her with a stick during play. The trauma of that accident, even though it was unintentional, haunted him throughout childhood. He developed a stutter. He withdrew into himself. He found solace in movies, sitting in the colored section of segregated theaters, watching white actors play heroes and villains, dreaming of a world beyond Mississippi's suffocating boundaries. The family reunited in Chicago when Morgan was a teenager, but the damage was done. His parents' marriage was failing. His father's drinking worsened. His mother worked multiple jobs just to keep food on the table. Morgan felt like a burden, another mouth to feed in a household already stretched beyond breaking. At Broad Street High School, a teacher noticed something special in the quiet kid who rarely spoke. She cast him in a school play. Morgan stepped on stage and found the only place he'd ever felt truly himself. Acting became his obsession. Morgan joined every school production. He studied performers. He memorized Shakespeare. He discovered that on stage, he didn't stutter. On stage, he could be anyone, say anything, escape the limitations of his actual life. His family thought it was a phase. His friends thought it was foolish. How does a poor black kid from Mississippi become an actor? It was absurd. It was impossible. It was the only thing Morgan wanted. After graduating in 1955, Morgan faced a choice: pursue an impossible dream or accept reality. He chose reality. He joined the United States Air Force, serving as an automatic tracking radar repairman. He thought military service would give him direction, purpose, a future. Instead, it confirmed what he already knew. He wasn't meant to fix machines. He was meant to tell stories. In 1959, after 4 years of service, Morgan left the Air Force and moved to Los Angeles with one clear goal. He was going to become an actor, no matter what it took. Los Angeles chewed up dreamers like Morgan and spit them out daily. He arrived with no connections, no training, no safety net. He enrolled in acting classes at Los Angeles City College, working dead-end jobs to pay for lessons. He was a transcript clerk at Los Angeles City College. He was a dancer at the 1964 World's Fair. He survived on hope and stubbornness, to resources that never ran out even when money did. The 1960s brought small roles in small productions. Morgan appeared in an off-Broadway production of The Nigger Lovers in 1967. He worked with the Opera Ring musical theater group. He took any role offered, no matter how minor, building his craft one forgotten performance at a time. In 1971, he joined the cast of The Electric Company, a children's educational television show on PBS. For 5 years, Morgan appeared as Easy Reader, a hip character who made reading cool for young audiences. It was steady work. It paid bills, but it wasn't the dream. Broadway became Morgan's proving ground. In 1978, he appeared in The Mighty Gents. In 1980, he starred in Coriolanus at the New York Shakespeare Festival. In 1984, he originated the role of Hulk Colburn in The Gospel at Colonus, winning an Obie Award. Critics started noticing this actor who brought quiet power to every role. But Morgan was already 47 years old. Most actors achieve stardom in their 20s or 30s. Morgan was running out of time. Then came 1987 and Street Smart. Morgan played Fast Black, a violent pimp in a film that barely made a ripple at the box office. But his performance was electrifying, earning him his first Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor. Hollywood finally noticed. At 50 years old, Morgan Freeman was an overnight success 3 decades in the making. The roles started coming. Driving Miss Daisy in 1989 brought another Oscar nomination and mainstream recognition. Glory in 1989 showcased his dramatic range. Morgan was no longer a character actor scraping by. He was a star. The 1990s cemented his legendary status. Unforgiven in 1992 paired him with Clint Eastwood in a Western masterpiece. The Shawshank Redemption in 1994 became one of the most beloved films in cinema history, with Morgan's portrayal of Red earning yet another Oscar nomination. Seven in 1995 proved he could anchor a dark thriller. His voice became as famous as his face, narrating March of the Penguins and countless documentaries with that distinctive timbre that made everything sound profound. Finally, in 2005, Morgan won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor for $1 Million Baby. At 67 years old, he stood on the Oscar stage holding the golden statue that represented a lifetime of struggle and perseverance. He'd worked for 50 years for that moment. The speech was brief, dignified, classic Morgan. But inside, complicated emotions swirled. Pride mixed with exhaustion, achievement mixed with resentment about how long it took, joy mixed with the knowledge of everything sacrificed to reach this moment. His personal life during these years of fame was turbulent. Morgan married Janetta Dare Bradshaw in 1967, adopting her daughter and having a son together before divorcing in 1979. In 1984, he married Myrna Colley, a costume designer. From the outside, it looked stable. From the inside, cracks were forming. Morgan's dedication to his career left little room for intimacy. Long separations during filming, the pressure of maintaining his image, the temptations that come with fame. The marriage survived on the surface while dying underneath. But the worst was yet to come. August 3, 2008, started like any other day. Morgan was driving his 1997 Nissan Maxima near his Mississippi ranch when the vehicle left the highway and flipped multiple times. Morgan and his passenger, Demaris Meyer, a woman who was not his wife, were severely injured. Emergency crews used the jaws of life to extract Morgan from the wreckage. His left shoulder was shattered. His arm was broken. His hand was paralyzed. He was airlifted to a hospital in Memphis fighting for his life. The physical injuries were devastating. Morgan underwent 4 hours of surgery to repair nerve damage. Doctors told him he might never regain full use of his left hand. For an actor who relied on physicality and presence, it was catastrophic. But the physical damage was nothing compared to the scandal that followed. The media descended like vultures. Why was Morgan with Demaris Meyer, a woman 47 years his junior, late at night on a deserted road? What was the nature of their relationship? Where was his wife? The tabloids exploded with speculation and accusations. Morgan's carefully cultivated image as America's grandfather figure shattered overnight. The whispers became shouts. The affair was real. Morgan had been involved with Meyer for years. His marriage to Myrna was a facade held together by lawyers and publicists. Everything we thought we knew about Morgan Freeman's character was built on lies. The man who played God couldn't keep his own house in order. In September 2010, Myrna filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. The divorce proceedings revealed a marriage that had been dead for years. They'd barely spoken. They'd lived separate lives under the same roof. Morgan had sought comfort elsewhere, and Myrna had endured the humiliation privately until the car crash made it impossible to hide anymore. The settlement was costly, emotionally and financially. Morgan's reputation took damage that no Oscar could repair, but the scandal deepened further. In 2018, 8 women accused Morgan of sexual harassment spanning decades. The accusations ranged from inappropriate comments to unwanted touching, to creating hostile work environments. CNN published a detailed investigation featuring multiple witnesses and victims. Morgan's response was defensive and unsatisfying. He apologized if anyone felt uncomfortable, but denied the specific allegations. The damage was done. The Me Too movement had claimed another icon. Morgan Freeman joined the list of beloved figures revealed to have serious character flaws. Behind closed doors, his health continued deteriorating. The paralysis in his left hand never fully resolved. Morgan wore a compression glove constantly to manage the pain and limited mobility. Fibromyalgia diagnosis brought chronic pain that no medication could fully control. He moved slower. He looked older. The vigorous actor who'd commanded screens for decades was visibly diminished. Friends worried. Family worried. Morgan himself wondered if he'd pushed his body too far for too long. The roles became fewer and less prestigious. Studios still wanted his voice for narration work, but leading roles dried up. He appeared in Now You See Me and its sequel, popcorn movies that paid well but lacked substance. Lucy in 2014 was forgettable. Going in Style in 2017 was charming but minor. Morgan Freeman was still famous, still respected by some, but no longer the untouchable icon. He was human after all, flawed, damaged, mortal. His granddaughter Edina Hines was murdered in 2015, stabbed to death by her boyfriend in a drug-fueled rage. The tragedy devastated Morgan. Edina was family, someone he'd helped raise, someone he loved deeply. Her violent death brought grief that no amount of fame or money could ease. Morgan attended her funeral barely able to stand, destroyed by loss and guilt about whether he could have done more to protect her. The revelation came during a candid interview in 2024, when Morgan was asked what he'd learned after 87 years of life. His answer wasn't what anyone expected. Morgan admitted that he'd wasted decades chasing validation from an industry that ultimately didn't care about him as a person. He said his greatest regret wasn't the failed marriages or the scandal, or even the missed time with family. His greatest regret was believing that acting success would fill the emptiness inside him. Morgan spoke about growing up feeling worthless because of poverty and racism, and how fame became a way to prove his worth to a world that told him he didn't matter. But the validation from audiences and critics never lasted. Each award led to needing the next award. Each great role led to anxiety about finding another great role. He was addicted to external approval because he'd never developed internal self-worth. At 87, he finally understood that no amount of applause can heal childhood wounds or replace genuine human connection. He addressed the harassment allegations directly, admitting that his behavior toward women had often been inappropriate. Morgan said he was raised in an era with different standards, but that wasn't an excuse. He'd made people uncomfortable. He'd abused his power. He'd behaved in ways that reflected his own brokenness rather than their value. The apology was more genuine than his previous statements, acknowledging specific harm rather than vague regret. Morgan also spoke about his physical limitations with heartbreaking honesty. The paralyzed hand, the chronic pain, the mortality he could no longer ignore. He talked about looking in the mirror and barely recognizing the old man staring back, about wondering if he'd trade all his success for one more day of being young and healthy and unknown, about the loneliness of being famous but having few genuine relationships because he'd sacrificed intimacy for ambition. The most emotional moment came when Morgan discussed what he wished he'd known at 30. He said he'd tell his younger self that the voice that made him famous was the least interesting thing about him, that his worth wasn't measured in box office receipts or awards, that the relationships he neglected were the only things that would have mattered at the end, that success without love is just elaborate loneliness. At 87, Morgan Freeman finally understands what really matters, and it has nothing to do with Hollywood. Morgan Freeman's revelation reminds us that behind every icon is a human being carrying wounds we never see. The voice that narrated the universe struggled to speak its own truth. The face that represented wisdom spent decades lost. The actor who played God forgot to save himself. His story isn't a cautionary tale about avoiding success. It's a reminder that success means nothing if you lose yourself achieving it. That fame is a poor substitute for genuine connection. That validation from strangers will never heal the rejection you experienced as a child. Morgan is still working, still lending his voice to projects, but with a different energy now. There's less hunger for approval, less need to prove anything. He's focused on the relationships he can still repair and making peace with the ones he can't. He speaks more carefully. He listens more deeply. He's become, finally, the wise elder his characters always pretended to be. Not because he has all the answers, but because he stopped pretending he does. What's your favorite Morgan Freeman performance? Which role showed you a different side of his talent? Share your memories in the comments below, and let's celebrate the complicated humanity of a complicated legend. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell because next week we're uncovering another Hollywood icon's devastating confession that nobody saw coming. Morgan Freeman once narrated a documentary about the universe asking fundamental